render. And for our parse strategy, I want to get back a request, parse, and I want to take in a string command. And then, just have a default render strategy, I'm going to have a default parse strategy. So far, so good. Alright, and for the default one, I pretty much know what that's going to be. So it's going to be a string. So I'm going to return new request. I'm going to do payload, just equal to the command, and type is equal to type of command. Oops. It's yelling at me. But why? Sorry, we know it's a string, so we should know it's a string. Alright, so that's our default one. Let's go ahead and build that. Looks good so far. We also need to crawl into our client, and for our client, let's just double check. We're passing everything into our start. So instead of our start, we also want to take in an parse strategy. And where are we declaring this guy? Man, if it was a snake, it would have bit me. So parse strategy. Okay. And then here where I'm reading in this line, and then I'm doing, hey, object to array, instead of doing new request here, I'm going to do parse strategy dot parse command. Oops, not command. What was it for? Data, yes. So we're getting in data from just a string. I'm going to pass it to the parse strategy, and the parse strategy is going to say, I'll give you back a request, you turn that into a byte array, and then send it off into the wild open. And then here we're going to say, pass a new default render strategy and a new default parse strategy. That feels pretty good. So we're back over here in our mudz game. And I'm going to remove that guy because we're going to be updating it here. Delete. Did we build that? We did. Copy that. Come back over into our mudz assemblies. Paste it in. Come back over into our mudz game. Add a reference. Yes. And then inside of our client, we also want to add a reference. Where's this guy? And then, just like in our server, where we said we want this easy TCP, we're going to do the same thing here. And then we're going to add in a new class called parse strategy. So many candidates for refactor Saturday, but I might not be doing that anymore. Explain that in a second. Alright, so then I want to do parse strategy. Okay, so then how do I get a request here? In the server, I did some fun stuff where I turned all of this request stuff into game requests and processed it and sent it back. So let's look at the client for our game. So we do a command parser, draw room, draw status bar, draw command prompt. We're going to leave that the same for now, but we definitely want some sort of handshake, right? So we want to be able to connect to the server, and once we get a handshake of some kind, look up the user, then we want to draw the room the user is in. So we still have a bit to do here. I'm going to go ahead and wipe all this old code, because we're getting to a place where it's just embarrassing. We want to get cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. Okay. So, let's go into the command parser. All this looks the way that we left it. Quite a bit of code. We're diligent people. Let's get out of render. So command parser is fine. Then we've got command prompt. So here's where we have our console read line, where we take this in, and then we say command parser.execute all these fun things, and we make this a recursive deal. Well, we don't actually want to have access to the hive mind anymore, so we actually need to refactor this thing quite a bit. It's a great example of how we inadvertently tightly coupled quite a few things into our client when in the moment it all looked great, but maybe we don't really want to. So we'll do the command prompt for now. Let's kind of look through this for a second. And if the command.readline is what we're going to get in here, then what we need to duplicate is something from the command parser. Sorry for the scrolling around. I know it can be disorienting. Let's go over here. So in our command parser.execute, we've got a few things. If it equals to be look, then we do this. Else we go to our get game response. So this is the bit. We want to be able to take new game request So let's take all of this, just for right now. It's going to be quite a bit of refactoring to get this thing lean and mean. So a command comes in, and ignore the red text from now. We want a request that is equal to a new request. We want the payload to be equal to this guy. So I don't really care about the game response quite yet. And the type is equal to type of game request. All right. And let's make this a return new. Okay, so the question becomes, how do we get from here to here and get rid of all these squigglies in a way that makes sense? So let's step out for a second and think about what we're doing. So we're not going to have hive mind. We're not going to have any of this stuff. All we're going to have is a client that takes in a command, sends it off, and then gets a response. And so just like we've got a parse strategy, we also need to have a render strategy. Okay, and then we know that we're going to be getting a game response back. So we're really splitting up what we need to do into the parser for the TCP client and then also the renderer from the response in the TCP server. So we come back over to here, our game parser.execute. So we've got render display command response draw status bar player. So this is essentially what we want to have right here. So take a look. I don't think the game engine render okay, so we're getting to where we need to be. We're almost to a place where we can send responses back and forth to the server. We're decoupling our command parser. And we're going to save some stuff for tomorrow because what we're going to want to do is take a look